To subtract decimals, we have to keep in mind the same fact that we had to remember when we were adding decimals. The decimal points need to stay in line so that it ensures that we are subtracting hundredths from hundredths, tenths from tenths, ones from ones, and so on. So here in the first problem, we have 4 and 31 hundredths minus 3 and 42 hundredths. As I was saying, we need to rewrite our problem so that our decimal places and our whole number places all line up. Easy way to remember to do that is to make sure the decimal does not move. Whatever is in front of the decimal here, the 3, goes in front of the decimal when we bring it down into our problem, and then 42 hundredths will also right behind the decimal and line up our decimal places. We bring our decimal point down and we're ready to subtract. We notice we can't take 2 hundredths from 1 hundredth, so we're going to borrow. Keeping in mind that our place value system is based on powers of 10, we're going to follow the same steps that we did when we borrowed in subtracting whole numbers. So the hundredths place will borrow from the tenths place. Tenths place will now have 2, and that 1/10 will then become 10 hundredths, so we have a total of 11 hundredths. 11 minus 2 is 9. We can't take 4 tenths from 2 tenths, so we'll have to borrow again. We borrow 1 whole from the 4, it becomes 3. That whole is cut into 10 tenths, plus the 2 gives us a total of 12 tenths, minus 4 is 8. 3 minus 3 would give us 0. This 0 in front of the decimal is optional. So the difference would be 89 hundredths. When we look at the second problem, we'll notice that glancing at it, this number has one decimal place value column, and this one has 2. So when we copy the problem, we are going to be careful that our decimal places are in line and we don't shift the digits to different place value columns. We bring the decimal down. The 7 has to be in the ones place. 32 hundredths goes behind the decimal. Copy the same exact number and bring it down here. We know that we add zeros into those empty decimal places, so now we're prepared to bring the decimal down and subtract. We'll borrow. The difference would be 2 and 48 hundredths. Keep in mind that you can check your work when you subtract by adding. You would add 7 and 32 hundredths plus your difference of 2 and 48 hundredths, and that should give you 9 and 80 hundredths as the original problem had. So you can do that, and I encourage you to do that especially on tests when you're subtracting. 4 and 5 tenths minus 3. We copy 4 and 5 tenths, and then we have to notice that the 3 does not have a decimal. We know that the 3 represents 3 ones or 3 wholes. We can add a decimal 0 to it here, or we can wait to do it when we bring the 3 into the ones place here and add the decimal 0. Either way, we bring the decimal down and we subtract. Again, you're welcome to check. I'm not going to show the check work on all of them, but you are encouraged to do so, as I said, especially on quizzes. So you need to practice it ahead of time. 17 and 8 tenths minus 3 and 6 tenths. 17 and 8 tenths is here, minus 3 and 6 tenths. Bring the decimal here in place, and then we make sure we have 3 and 6 tenths, just as here in our problem. Bring the decimal down and subtract. A little reminder, here we're subtracting and we have a whole number minus a decimal. So the reminder comes in to here when we try to line up 6 and 12 hundredths. The 6 is in the ones place. We know it has to go under the 7 in the ones place. 12 hundredths goes behind it. And if we kind of compare it to money, we can change $7 from just the 7 into 7.00, and it still means the same thing. So now we can subtract. So this is kind of like subtracting $7 minus $6.12. We will have to do some borrowing here. So the difference would be 88 hundredths. The last problem we're going to work together is 8 and 41 hundredths minus 3 and 2 tenths. And the decimal point is here. The 3 is in front of the decimal, the 2 is behind it. We cannot shift these digits and move them as we want around with the decimal. They have to stay in the same places they were, excuse me, in the problem. So 3 and 2/10. Add a 0 behind it to turn it into 3 and 20 hundredths and balance it out with 8 and 41 hundredths. So they now have the same number of places. And we subtract.